Hey everyone, welcome to another installment of Harry Potter Theory. Today, we're going to be discussing a theory surrounding a popular question that has been posed by fans since the release of Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. Why didn't Harry become an Obscurial? Let's start with why this question popped up in the first place. Well, prior to the introduction of the Fantastic Beasts character, Credence Barebone, Obscurials had never been mentioned in the wizarding world of Harry Potter before. So, what exactly is an Obscurial? For those of you who may not know, an Obscurial is a young witch or wizard who is physically or emotionally abused to the point that they feel the need to repress their magic and hide their abilities. This repression is directly related to trauma experienced as a result of their magic and a development of hatred, fear, or shame in regard to their powers. These extremely negative emotions combined with their attempt to suppress their magic then turns into a parasitical force comprised of dark magic, known as an Obscurus. Obscurials are often young children who usually don't live past their preteen years. Throughout the Harry Potter series, we only ever hear of one witch who could, retrospectively, be labelled as an Obscurial, Ariana Dumbledore. The explanation of her illness fits the description of a witch who had developed an Obscurus, so it is certainly possible. However, nothing has ever been confirmed by J.K. Rowling or other Wizarding World sources. In any case, Obscurials didn't become canon until well after the Harry Potter series had concluded, so I suppose a rather lame explanation certainly could be that Harry wasn't an Obscurial because the concept hadn't been created yet. However, that's no fun now, is it? So instead, let's put that thought aside and give this theory a proper look, shall we? As I mentioned, this is a question that has been brought up by many a fan since Credence made his Obscurial debut in the 2016 Fantastic Beasts film. So it really shouldn't come as a surprise that J.K. Rowling has indeed provided reasoning as to why Harry never developed an Obscurus. Directly on her website, jkrowling.com, she's answered this very question under an FAQ section. An Obscurus is developed under very specific conditions: trauma associated with the use of magic, internalized hatred of one's own magic, and a conscious attempt to suppress it. The Dursleys were too frightened of magic ever to acknowledge its existence to Harry, while Vernon and Petunia had a confused hope that if they were nasty enough to Harry, his strange abilities might somehow evaporate. They never taught him to be ashamed or afraid of magic. Even when he was scolded for making things happen, he didn't make any attempt to suppress his true nature, nor did he ever imagine that he had the power to do so. Alright, so let's unpack that. In order to become an Obscurial, a witch or wizard must experience abuse or trauma that is associated with magic, and from there, suppress their magic for fear of hatred of their power. The big clue as to why Harry never developed an Obscurus then is in the magic of it all. To better understand, let's first take a closer look at the circumstances of the witches and wizards who we know, or suspect, to be Obscurials. Credence Barebone. Credence was adopted by an American nomad and second Salemer named Mary Lou Barebone. She was a strict, unsympathetic woman who was fanatical about the eradication of magic from the world. Mary Lou openly despised magic and everything about it, hoping that her involvement in the New Salem Philanthropic Society would help expose the wizarding world and, ultimately, extinguish it. This, of course, means that Credence would have grown up in a toxic, prejudiced environment in which he would have heard Mary Lou preach, at length, how despicable it was to be a witch or wizard. Being that Mary Lou was the only mother he'd ever known, it's no wonder that his magic brought him a sense of shame, which we see in the very way he carries himself in Fantastic Beasts. Combine this sense of shame with the physical abuse Mary Lou would inflict on Credence, beating him with his own belt whenever something odd would happen, you can imagine the profound sense of humiliation and possible hatred Credence would have harbored towards his magical abilities. A Sudanese girl. In the first Fantastic Beasts film, Newt Scamander talks of an Obscurial, a young Sudanese girl of only 8 years old whom he came across in his travels of the African continent. The girl's Obscurus developed after she was persecuted by her entire village for demonstrating magical abilities. Again, this persecution would have, of course, been extremely traumatic, and the trauma would have been directly associated with her magic. It's not hard to imagine that being rejected and mistreated by your entire community would be enough to make anyone feel intense shame and hatred for the very thing that made you different. Ariana Dumbledore. As I mentioned earlier in the video, it has never been confirmed that Ariana Dumbledore, younger sister of Albus, was in fact an Obscurial, but the development of an Obscurus could certainly be explained by her trauma and ensuing illness. As you may recall, when she was a young girl, Ariana was viciously attacked by a group of muggles who witnessed her doing magic. Again, this very disturbing event, which was the direct result of Ariana performing magic, aligns with Rowling's explanation of how an Obscurus develops. So it's very possible that after the attack, Ariana could have been so traumatized that she became resentful of her abilities. In an effort to never again be targeted, she may have tried to push her power away, because, of course, if she hadn't been performing magic, those muggles wouldn't have known that she was a witch and never would have attacked her. Which brings us back round to our dear boy, Harry. Now, don't get me wrong, Harry was abused by the Dursleys, but for whatever reason, when it came to the Dursleys' incredibly unjust and almost illogical mistreatment of Harry, he seemed to just roll with the punches, so to speak. Harry was repeatedly punched on the nose by his cousin Dudley, and treated by his aunt and uncle like a servant. The boy was even made to live in a cupboard, and yet he was a rather well-adjusted young person who had no trouble making social connections when he arrived at Hogwarts. So, while there certainly was both emotional and physical abuse, Harry was quite resilient to the point that he was never particularly traumatized by any one event. Sure, he wished he could have been raised in different circumstances, but the young Harry that we meet in the Philosopher's Stone doesn't seem to be too ashamed of who he is. Far from it, he actually seems quite sure of himself, aware that his relatives are silly and frivolous people, making friends with Ron before he even arrives at Hogwarts, turning away alliances with unkind wizards like Draco Malfoy, and asking the Sorting Hat not to place him in Slytherin. Yes, Harry Potter, despite never knowing who he truly was until the age of 11, seems to know and like himself quite well. What's more, while Harry was aware that strange things would happen around him as he grew up, he never admitted to himself that these occurrences were the workings of magic, and certainly never acknowledged that he could be the cause of these things. In fact, Harry just muddled his way along each event, often thinking that he simply had rotten luck. After all, he was blamed for unfortunate accidents all the time. In any case, without recognizing that these strange occurrences were his doing, he could hardly be ashamed of them, could he? How could he try to repress his abilities if he didn't even realize they were his abilities? Well, he couldn't, of course. And so, if we put all those pieces together, we can see very clearly why Harry never became an Obscurial. There was no traumatic event or abuse towards Harry that was explicitly linked to his magic. As Harry was never aware that it was his magic that led to many punishments from the Dursleys, he didn't have the opportunity to become afraid or ashamed of his abilities. Because Harry didn't realize he could control the strange occurrences, he never tried to suppress his power or hide who he was, because, of course, he didn't know himself. Which brings us to the end of another video. As always, I'd love to know what you think. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And as always, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, there's no such thing as magic.